Hello again, guys. Welcome to our TTMI TV program. Like I said before, the testimony of Jesus is the spirit prophecy. And what God is doing in the lives of these young people and adults, it's amazing. God is real. God is powerful. And I want to introduce you today a wonderful young lady all the way from Georgia, and is part of this TTMI family. Her name is Jordanita, and you're going to be blessed by her testimony.
March was my first trip going with TTMI to Costa Rica, and before we went, the Lord had just put a burden in my heart to pray for Costa Rica, and I fell in love with Costa Rica before I even went there. And when we got there, I was just expectant, like that the Lord was going to do something incredible, but He did more than I ever thought He could. I was still struggling with like just hearing the Holy Spirit and being okay, is that really you, God? But one service, I was taking pictures, and the Lord told me to put my camera down and begin to pray. And so I started praying in the Spirit and just asking God just to come and do whatever He had to do. And I kept hearing the Spanish word aparte, and I thought, what does that mean? And so I went to one of our translators and I said, what does this word mean? And they said it means to separate and to set apart. And I thought, okay, so I just prayed into that, and the message was incredible. But after that, we had an altar call, and people were flooding the altar. And I remember thinking, okay, God, who is this word for? Who is it for? And I see two girls that had come up, so I go to pray over them, and the word wasn't for them. So I loved on them, and I ministered to them, and then I started walking away. Service was over. And as I walked away, there was a little girl on the front row, about 13 years old, and she looked at me, and when she did, my spirit just began to go crazy. And so I walk up to her, and as soon as I get close to her, she grabs me and pulls me into her and just starts sobbing on my shoulder. And I'm crying over her, and I'm like, God, what do I do? What kind of word do I give her? What is it that I do? And the Lord said, she doesn't need a word from you. You don't have to have a word from me to give to people. What she needs you to do is love her. You need to love her. And so I just held her, and I let her cry, and I cried with her. And without having a word, without having to be the churchy and religious, I need a word for somebody. If I pray for someone, I have to have a word. You don't. It's not always a word that they need. Sometimes it's just love that people need. It's a hug. It's someone to care. And so we stood there for about 20 minutes just crying. And but after that, I looked at her and I said, tell me what's on your heart. Because just through that act of love, it started a connection between me and her. And I said, what's on your heart? Like, what's going on in your life? And she said, my brothers are violent. My father has left our home. And my grandmother and my mother have separated me from my family. And when she said it, the Lord reminded me of the word He gave me in the service, aparte, to separate, to set apart. And He said, this is why you're here. You're here for her. And so I grabbed her again, and we just cried and cried and cried. And I thought, this is the love of God. This is what He wanted to do the whole time. And so obviously it was impacting for her that she found the love of God. And she knows now that she can just call on His name when she's lonely or when she's in the dark. But it impacted me knowing that I don't have to have a word from God for somebody. That God isn't just a spoken word. God is love. God is an act of love. God is a hug. He's just love. And He wants people to know that He loves them so incredibly much that He doesn't want them to be in the dark or without Him. So that impacted me, knowing that just hear the Lord. Just be obedient to Him, and you'll be amazed at what He does. So.